and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones, and we're so glad to have you here. In a state where ways to vote have changed significantly in recent years, there are now renewed calls for stronger safeguards at the polls. Assemblyman Gerry Scharfenberger, a Republican from Monmouth County, has reintroduced legislation that would require voters to show a photo ID before casting a ballot. He's standing by to talk about that. But first, we caught up with New Jersey's junior U.S. Senator Andy Kim at a town hall in Monmouth County, where he was taking questions directly from constituents. Here's what he had to say.
I truly believe that the town hall is an incredibly important American tradition.
Senator Andy Kim brought his town hall to St. Stephen's Church in Asbury Park, where immigration quickly became the focus of the night.
I'd like to hear some of his concrete actions and steps that he and other members of Congress are taking to keep the authoritarian regime at bay.
I'm interested in finding out more about ICE purchasing warehouses. I know there's some discussion about whether the one in Roxbury has been purchased or not purchased. So that's my primary thing.
That they may find, not only just come into the community and take people at random, but, also have a specific reason that they're, looking for this certain person, and that you go specifically to that person, not just pick up anyone.
While many in attendance appeared supportive, not everyone came to agree. Nia Summerlin, chairwoman of the Asbury Park Housing Authority, challenged the senator directly.
I'm not a fan of any of them. I don't really do politics that well, so it's kind of like, no, let's just hear what they got to talk about, what they're saying, what they're bringing to the table, and what they can do for our community.
In his opening remarks, Senator Kim addressed immigration policy head-on, defending his record and calling for what he described as balance.
I was participating in a hearing in the Senate with the director of ICE, the director of the CBP, and when I was going through this, it was just the other week. It just again highlighted so much of the challenge that we're facing and just the extremism in their tactics. For instance, I was pointing out that when you think through and you add together the police forces of Minneapolis, of St. Paul, of the state troopers of Minnesota, those three big pillars of the state, it's about 1,700 police officers that they have. The sheer number of federal agents deployed through ICE and CBP were between 3,000 and 4,000 federal agents. So just like giving you that perspective, like nearly twice the number of federal agents compared to the local law enforcement. And that's why, on the ground, it was very much, the word that I hear from people in Minnesota is it felt like they were an occupied state, that they were an occupied city in Minneapolis. And I wanted to hit that home to you because, look, we're facing challenges right here in our own state, within our own communities, right? We see the problems, whether it's Delaney Hall up in Newark, which I've been to a couple times, and just seeing just the inhumane treatment at these detention facilities, especially the fact that they're run by these for-profit companies that are just making billions of dollars off of that, industrialization of human misery, or the fact that right now ICE is trying to purchase a warehouse out in Roxbury, out west of Morristown. And the community there doesn't want it. Nobody in the state wants it. Because we know that this is just going to further enable the type of actions that ICE has been taking all across this country and furthering that problem. But what you see in Minnesota is really the culmination of that. And what I asked the ICE director, because on that day that we did the hearing, they announced that they're going to remove the surge from Minnesota, something that they should never have done in the first place, but certainly should have de-escalated immediately upon just the rise of the challenges that they face there. So I asked the ICE director, I said, now that you've seen so much of the damage that you have done to this state, to this country, Can you look me in the eye? Can you tell Congress that you will never use this surge tactic again? Because when I see you leaving Minnesota, the first thing that comes to mind is where next? Is it going to be New Jersey? Is it going to be some other state? So I said, can you look me in the eye and tell me that this is not a tactic that you're going to use again? And of course, you know what he said? He said, no, he can't do that. Because this is still in their blood. This is deep to the core. This isn't just about one or two leaders. This is a rot within the institution. Not just of ICE, but we see it with CBP, which was the entity that was responsible for the killing of Alex Peretti. We see it across the Department of Homeland Security, whether that's Kristi Noem, who I think many of you will agree should not be in that job, should be fired, should have to be resigned, or should have to be forced out of that job.
When the floor opened for questions, one attendee pressed him on his vote to confirm Kristi Noem, a decision that drew reaction from the crowd.
On your direct question about the Kristi Noem vote, it was a complete mistake. I admit that. I was thinking it through as I'm a member of the Homeland Security Committee. So if you look at the others, Democrats have voted yes for, the others are on the Homeland Committee. And what we were thinking about as a group is like, look, we know how dangerous things are going to be when it comes to immigration. Can we try to be some bridge that can have some open communication with her? Especially when I was thinking about the issues facing New Jersey. Over 50% of the constituent service cases that my office gets are about the Department of Homeland Security in some way. And I was thinking, maybe there needs to be someone in this state that can get a hold of her. And if there are crises and challenges that we face on immigration, at least one of us has a direct channel to her. And so that's why I did the vote. The Republicans already had enough votes to get her passed. And I thought if I could at least try to deliver a channel that could maybe help some constituents down the road, that was maybe worth it.
Other topics included job growth in New Jersey and federal funding cuts to the National Institutes of Health.
I've been learning about this industry called photonics. Probably something that maybe not a lot of you have heard of before. I didn't certainly know much about it, but this is the type of technology like fiber optic cables, like medical imaging, and so many other things that we see in different applications. New Jersey has the largest and densest concentration of photonics companies in the entire world. This is technology that can be incredibly transformative. Something that came out from our leads on companies like Bell Labs and things that we can continue to push on. That's something that I'm trying to grow and trying to make sure, and if you look at it, we're able to get people trained in our community colleges straight into these businesses. It's something that isn't just for the elites. This is something that can create mobility. Those are the things that I'm trying to push on it. But again, always being mindful about how we grow and making sure that this isn't going to further concentrate wealth and opportunity, but this is something that can hopefully expand it. First of all, it is so damaging to our global competitiveness, to our economy. When we're thinking about our ability to innovate, that our ability to engage and be able to come up with the next cures, that's so important. But I hear from some of my Republican colleagues, they're like, well, the private sector can handle that. And it's so fundamentally wrong, because if you talk to any pharmaceutical company or biotech company, they'll be the first to tell you that it's the basic science, the basic research that they're able to build off from. That is something that that the government is able to do better than anybody else in terms of being able to mobilize. And that's our taxpayer dollars, right?
After more than 90 minutes of discussion, Senator Kim took questions from reporters. We asked him how he sees Congress navigating the country's political divide.
Right now, we do not have three functioning branches of government. We have one branch of government, the executive branch, that's trying to dominate and make the other two branches subservient to it. And unfortunately, Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune, they've been playing right into this. For instance, we should be moving forward on congressional engagement and oversight when it comes to these military actions that Trump is doing abroad. that he's threatening a war with Iran and Congress is absolutely silent. That's disgusting, and that's something that does a disservice to our service members whose lives are going to be put at risk if the president goes ahead. So I hope that we can change this. I was part of the class that flipped the House in 2018. I think we need to make sure we have checks and balances restored.
And afterwards, we checked back with Summerlin to see whether the town hall addressed her concerns.
Just to hear people say that these are the things that some of the things that they want to fight for is a plus. But even though we say it, now I need to start saying, well, I said in a meeting and I heard you say A, B, and C. Now I get to hold you accountable.
Stay with us as we continue here on New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. More to come after the break.
Play it like the New York Sirens. Live in the spotlight. Etch your name in lights. Embrace the noise. And when it calls you, turn it up. Get louder. Play it like they'll hear us everywhere. Because this is our team. New York Sirens. Play it big.
Thanks for staying with New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. Voter ID is once again front and center, not just at the national level, but here in New Jersey as well. Now, across the country, states handle voter identification differently. Some require a photo ID, others require a non-photo identification, and some require no ID at all. Here in New Jersey, voters are not required to show a voter ID or photo ID at the polls, and that is where we pick up the story with Assemblyman Gerry Scharfenberger. He represents the state's 13th legislative district, which includes parts of Monmouth County, and has legislation pending that would require a photo ID at the polls. Assemblyman, welcome.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
All right, so bring us up to speed. You have reintroduced A841 in this session, and that would require photo ID for in-person voting. So can you talk a little bit about what prompted you to bring the bill back right now, especially after recent changes like expanding vote by mail and early voting?
Yes, Laura, thank you. And this has become such a hot issue as of late. And the concerns are out there. We hear it almost on a daily basis, people being concerned about the sanctity and safety of our elections. And I think anyone could accept the outcome of an election if they're sure it's fair and honest. So that's what this bill aims to do. And there are 36 states across the country that already have some form of voter ID. So this is nothing radical or nothing new. And the interesting part is there's a recent poll out there that shows unbelievable numbers of people supporting voter ID. 95% of Republicans, 71% of Democrats, and about 83% overall. So those kind of numbers are a no-brainer to a legislator that we really have to do this, and the demand is there from the electorate across the country, but certainly here in New Jersey also.
And it's interesting, as this is also debated at the national level, there are people that, certain individuals claim to be advocating for, and people are saying, well, no, I don't have a problem not only getting an ID. Are you insinuating I can't get an ID because of where I come from, or that I would be opposed to it? So can you talk a little bit about just the rhetoric overall from the national on down to the state?
Sure. It's ridiculous. It's absurd to say somebody cannot get an ID in this day and age. And when you see the list of things that you need a photo ID to apply for, everything from getting a library card. I was in the library just last week renewing my library card. I had to show them photo ID. Certainly things like picking up tickets at a minor league baseball will call window, getting on a plane, getting into an office building, even applying for food stamps, welfare, Medicaid, all of those programs require a photo ID. So to say that people simply do not have it is absurd, and that's falling apart, that narrative where people can't get it. And there's a way that the government can actually provide photo ID if for some reason you don't have it.
Yeah. I mean, especially in New Jersey, on a little bit of a lighter note, not to make light of it, but honestly, if you've gone through all the steps to get your real ID, man, you want to you want to show that thing, because that took a lot of work to get the ID.
Just getting an appointment
Just
is a
getting
lot
the
of work.
appointment. Yes, yes.
No one's
Yeah.
getting the ID. But
Yeah.
you're right, and the real ID is the game changer for this. That's the final nail in the coffin of that narrative where people don't have the opportunity to get an ID.
Yeah. Well, you had an op-ed recently, and you actually talked about a friend's shock at not being asked for an ID when they were voting. Can you talk us a little bit, can you walk us through that, and, again, why you see this as a critical gap in New Jersey's system?
Sure. I use one example of a friend of mine who sent me a panicked text saying, I just voted and they didn't ask me for identification. And I texted them back and said, well, legally, they do not have to ask you for identification. And he was shocked. And we hear this a lot, too, from a lot of folks who said, I just voted and nobody asked me for ID. So the prevailing thought out there is that it's an expected thing to be able to show identification to prove you are who you say you are. And something as important as voting, where, people are naturally concerned about the honesty of the elections, we should do everything possible to ensure that sort of honesty and sort of forthrightness that would come by simply showing a photo ID. Now,
And this, go
across
ahead, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, across the country, 36 states already have this. So, again, this is something that's been proven. In North Carolina, when they introduced photo ID, African American participation actually went up significantly. So to say it's going to impact minority groups or, sort of peripheral groups is just, not true.
And because you don't have to show identification or a birth certificate, you don't have to in order to get the ID. And a voter ID doesn't even have your picture on it, right? I think that's where perhaps some people can get confused. Like you can, well, I know back in the 80s, right, when I registered to vote, was it the 80s? Yeah. You just took an oath, you just, do you attest that you're a citizen? I don't remember if I showed an ID. I know in New Jersey, when you're getting your driver's license, they give people a chance to register to vote. So, but there isn't a federal law that says you have to show a birth certificate or any type of ID in order to register to vote. This is more about when you have to show the voter ID card. Can you kind of help us understand? Because it seems simple, but people overthink it or get confused.
Sure. I mean, when the poll worker, you approach the poll worker as you do, you go up and they check your name and everything. That's the point where you would have to show the photo ID. And it's really a no-brainer when you think of it. It would be very quick. You could have it ready. You have to show it. And show it to the poll worker so they can be confident that you are who you say you are. And we've heard, anecdotal stories from around the state of people signing other people's names in those old books we used to have and that sort of thing. This would not happen in this case where you have to show photo ID and they're able to match up you with a government-sanctioned identification card.
So is there a difference between showing a photo ID and an actual voter ID? Like, I'm trying to think, I don't know where my voter ID card is, but I will, I can easily pull out my license. But in New Jersey, can you refresh my memory? I'm blanking on that.
Yeah, well, it depends on how the legislation is written. If it requires photo ID, and I don't believe the voter ID cards have photos on them, then you would have to produce something, either a driver's license. But to give you an example, my mother-in-law is going to be 99, and she never drove a day in her life, but got a photo identification card from motor vehicles. So there are all sorts of options out there to be able to acquire a photo ID to comply with the law, depending on how it's written. And the SAVE Act is a federal law. Our law here has, maybe slightly different, but there's ways to resolve that. That's the easy part. The hard part is getting the political will to vote it into law.
Well, let's talk about that, the political will, because as you mentioned, there are many seniors who have given up their licenses because they no longer drive, and they do get, an ID so they can fly, so they can do other things. When you show up to the doctor, a lot of times your insurance card, you have to show ID to prove who you are. But a recent Pew poll highlights, again, as you mentioned, some strong bipartisan support up to 95% of Republicans, 71% of Democrats. What is it? What are you hearing? What is the temperature you're taking of your colleagues in New Jersey?
Well, I mean, there are many who are for it, but many who are they'll confide in me something different, maybe than they may say publicly. So I'm not going to call them out on that. But I think it's inevitable that we're going to see some form of voter ID in the near future, only because those kind of numbers, you don't want to alienate your base. And there's a big part of the base of both parties in there, and including independents, that really want this and see the value in it. So you can hold out as long as you want, but as long as those numbers maintain at the level they are, it's going to be very difficult to resist this anymore. And I think you're going to see some form. We'll see what the final product is, but I think our bill, and when I say our, Assemblywoman Vicky Flynn, my cohort here in LD 13, and my bill with many co-sponsors would be a great addition to the legislation and protecting our elections.
Yeah, but there are people who do oppose this, and the argument is it could disproportionately affect minority voters or those who can't have easy access to ID. So again, can you talk a little bit about, because you've called the claim really absurd and an insult in the op-ed, and like I said, you've pointed to an increase of some African American turnout in North Carolina's law. So can you just talk a little bit more about that, how it would not disenfranchise anyone in New Jersey, because things are tense right now.
Yeah, to me, that's very, very insulting and demeaning to infer that someone can't get a photo ID in this day and age and may not for whatever reason. So we see it all across the country that photo ID has not had any negative impact on any participation among any groups. And this has happened in state after state. So when you have 36 states successfully doing this with no problem and even increasing voter turnout, there's no logical reason to be against this. And we're going to keep fighting for this. This is so important. And, like I said before, it's so important to have people's peace of mind with their elections, to be secure in the fact that these elections are upfront, they're transparent, and they're honest. And anyone who can prove that that's happening, I don't think you'll get any pushback from any of the voters out there after an election's over. But when you have the suspicion because you don't have these safeguards in place, that's where a lot of problems come in also.
Yeah. So in New Jersey, we have many ways to vote. You can vote by mail, early voting, day of voting. Would your bill just affect in-person and early voting, or what about absentee ballots, so vote by mail? How would that impact that?
It would affect everything, and we really can't just limit this to one form of voting. The early voting and the same day, they're pretty much the same concept. Certainly the vote by mail is a problem. We have another bill, and not to get off topic here, but that would cleanse the voter rolls of ineligible voters. So that's another problem out there where there are ineligible voters still on the rolls and impacting the vote by mail. So this is a two-part problem that we're trying to solve here with two very good pieces of legislation.
Well, that's what I was going to ask about. So that the other sponsored related bill, it's the interstate voter cross-check program, and that's aimed at preventing fraud. So can you talk about how they would work together to really, it's about securing the election, so voters don't have to go through what we have in other ones where people are claiming this election was not legitimate.
Absolutely. And the cross-check software is fantastic, where it scans all the voter rolls in the country and where there are duplicates. And in fairness, many people may move away. And the last thing you're thinking about when you're making a move anywhere is, oh, gee, I have to alert the election board that I'm moving out of state. So that'll identify that. You can determine which is an accurate address. Certainly, you could link it up with death certificates, where if somebody passes away, they're automatically taken off the voter rolls. So this would really help a lot with cleaning up the voter rolls. And the other part of the equation is then the voter ID at the polls. So it's a two-pronged attack there.
I mean, really, ultimately, you want to engage voters. You want to have, and there are more and more. There's other legislation, that will allow younger people to register before they turn 18, so they're able to vote right when they turn 18. So can you just talk a little bit about how you are really trying to engage young voters and voters just across the state?
Yeah, in fact, Laura, we would love to see an 80, 90% turnout regularly for elections rather than the 40 or 50% we see at times. So I think if people have more confidence that the elections are honest, they will tend to come out. Right now, you get people who are very indifferent. They throw up their hands and say, well, it's, my vote won't count because it'll be canceled out by somebody's illegal vote. So these are things that would help turnout overall just by instilling confidence in the electorate out there.
Assemblyman, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Laura, as always.
And that'll do it for today. Thanks so much for watching New Jersey Politics. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.
Play it like the New York Sirens. Live in the spotlight. Etch your name in lights. Embrace the noise. And when it calls you, turn it up. Get louder. Play it like they'll hear us everywhere. Because this is our team. New York Sirens. Play it big.